Have you ever felt it? That subtle unease in your gut when you share your dreams. The smile on their face doesn't quite reach their eyes. Their words are kind, but the energy is off. It's not paranoia. It's your intuition whispering, be careful. Not everyone clapping for you wants you to win. The most dangerous enemy is often the one who hides in plain sight. A friend, a sibling, a partner, sometimes even your own reflection. Because envy wears 1,000 masks, supportive words, fake applause, even concern disguised as advice. And in your hunger for connection, you miss the signs. You give them the map to your soul, and they use it to burn your dreams from the inside out. So, let's talk. Let's peel back the layers. Let's look at why you feel drained around certain people, why your fire dims in rooms that should ignite you, and how to protect your energy without becoming cold. Machiavelli once warned, men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. In other words, nothing wounds the ego like someone else's success. When you begin to rise, to speak, to shine, to lead, you mirror back to others all the ways they've stayed small. And not everyone will clap for the mirror. So you dim, you silence yourself, you downplay your wins to avoid the stare that lingers too long. You become a smaller version of yourself to fit their comfort zone. But let me ask you, at what cost? There's a kind of emotional manipulation that doesn't shout. It whispers. It tells you you're too much, that you're changing, that you shouldn't forget where you came from. But really, what they're saying is, stay where I can control you. Stay beneath me. Stay the same. And this is where your power begins to slip. Not in one dramatic fall, but in 1,000 subtle concessions. You consult others before you trust your own voice. You hesitate when you should leap. You ask for permission to dream. But you were never meant to shrink for anyone's comfort. Not your friends, not your partners, not even your families. Nietzsche said, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And that's the paradox of self-protection. You must build walls but not presence. You must guard your heart but not cage it. So how do you tell? How do you see the invisible lines between love and control? You watch the signs. Does their support vanish when you're winning? Do they deflect your joy back to themselves? Do they give advice that feels more like fear than wisdom? Do you feel smaller when you walk away from them? Because real support feels light. It feels clean. It lifts you quietly without strings. And anything less than that is not love. It's possession. If this message is landing with you, hit subscribe. We go deeper like this every week. Into the shadows, into your patterns, into your power. Let's keep going. Here's what most people never realize. Your light is a trigger. Not because you did anything wrong, but because it exposes what others haven't faced in themselves. When you walk with confidence, those without it will call you arrogant. When you speak with clarity, those unsure of their own truth will call you rigid. And when you succeed, those who never gave themselves permission to try will resent you for reminding them that they could have. But remember this, jealousy doesn't always scream. Often, it smiles. It congratulates you while secretly hoping you fail. It offers help, but only to stay close enough to sabotage when the time is right. Machiavelli understood this better than most. In The Prince, he warned that the vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances. People will cheer for you, as long as your rise benefits them, but threaten their ego, their control, their illusion, and the same crowd will turn. So ask yourself, are you surrounded by allies or observers? Are you loved for who you are or tolerated as long as you stay small? You once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The unconscious desire to belong, to be liked, can chain you to people who quietly resent your growth. Because here's the trap. You think loyalty means staying connected. Even when that connection is draining you, you think kindness means staying silent. Even when their words cut deeper than knives, you think being a good person means giving everyone access. But access is power, and power when given without discernment becomes a weapon, used against you. So let's be honest. Some people are not confused. They're not broken. They're not going through something. They're strategic. They study your insecurities. They sense your longing for approval. They use your empathy as a leash, and they feed off your guilt to keep you small. This is why discernment is not cold. It's kind. Boundaries are not selfish. They're sacred. And protecting your space is not betrayal. It's survival. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world, your dreams, your next move. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it's wisdom, because the less they know, the less they can twist dots. So here's your challenge. Start observing who claps when you win. Start noticing who shows up without needing a spotlight. Start listening not just to their words, but to the energy behind them. That quiet tension in a room, that's truth. That subtle shift in tone when you share good news, that's envy. That friend who only calls when they need something, that's not support, that's utility. Protect yourself, not by building walls, but by building filters. Not everyone near you is your enemy, but not everyone deserves a front row seat either. You don't need to announce who you're pulling away from. Distance speaks louder than words. Just move and watch who tries to pull you back. Not because they miss you, but because your independence breaks the illusion of control they held over you. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men forget more easily the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." What does that mean for you? It means people don't grieve your absence because they love you. They grieve it when they lose what you gave them access to, your time, your validation, your emotional labor. So look again. Who are you constantly explaining yourself to? Who drains you with just one more favor? Who suddenly turns cold the moment you say no? That isn't friendship. That's emotional extortion. And here's what most don't tell you. Success isolates. Not because you've changed, but because your presence becomes a mirror. A mirror that forces others to confront their excuses, their comfort zones, their unfulfilled dreams. And mirrors can be brutal. You might think keeping small keeps the peace, but peace without truth is just prolonged tension. Eventually, that buried tension erupts in resentment, in passive aggression, in betrayal that catches you off guard because you were too busy giving the benefit of the doubt. But doubt is a warning, an intuitive whisper, and when you've grown enough, you stop silencing that voice just to stay liked. Nietzsche warned, "He who cannot put his thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of dispute." Translation: you cannot engage with manipulation from a place of emotion. You must be composed, clear, cold if needed, because manipulation thrives in confusion. It survives in ambiguity. It feeds on your emotional reaction, so the moment you react, you give them the blueprint for how to control you. So, what's the antidote? You observe, you question motives, you learn to sit in silence without needing to defend yourself, and more than anything, you let people reveal themselves, because time is the ultimate test. Consistency is the true character, and how they treat you when you no longer serve their interests. That's the truth they were hiding all along. Now, if this message is landing with you, if your heart is beating a little harder right now, if you're remembering names and moments you tried to suppress, then hit subscribe. We go deeper like this every week. This channel is your space for awakening, for reclaiming, for rising. Let it be your reminder. You're not crazy. You're just finally seeing clearly. Here's a truth they never taught you in school. Some people are addicted to your uncertainty, because as long as you doubt yourself, you're easy to guide, easy to bend, easy to keep small. But when you begin trusting your gut, when you stop explaining, stop apologizing, stop diluting your wins to make others comfortable, you disrupt their system. And that disruption, it scares them, Because now, they have to confront who they are without the version of you they once controlled. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And he was right, because self-acceptance comes at a cost. The cost of losing those who only loved you when you were easy to manipulate. But here's the reward. You become unshakable. You walk into rooms no longer asking for permission. You speak without seeking validation. You rest without guilt. And success stops feeling like a battlefield. You're no longer pulled by guilt or pushed by fear. You are centered, calm, rooted. And when people try to reel you back in with shame, you don't flinch. You don't explain. You don't defend. You let the silence speak for you. Because silence is power. Let's be honest. You've probably had moments where you felt like the villain in someone else's story. For simply saying no. For setting a boundary. For choosing yourself. That's not selfishness. That's sovereignty. You were not put here to be endlessly available. You're not an emotional sponge for others to squeeze dry. And your loyalty should not be a weapon they use to keep you obedient. You're allowed to grow beyond the role you once played. You're allowed to outgrow people who only knew the insecure version of you. You're allowed to be misunderstood, especially by those who were never truly listening. Because when you rise, you don't owe anyone a step-by-step explanation of how you got there. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Your growth is not a democracy. So from this moment forward, ask yourself, are the people around me investing in my healing or feeding off my hurting? Do they clap when I win or go quiet? Do they cheer for my independence or call it arrogance? These answers will tell you everything. Now breathe. Feel your chest rise. This is what power feels like when it returns home. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to convince anyone to see your worth. You only need to know it and protect it. Because once you begin walking in truth, you'll find yourself surrounded by fewer people, but the right ones. Those who don't flinch when you rise. Those who don't compete when you shine. Those who mirror your self-respect rather than mock it. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men, and to imitate those who have been supreme." But he also warned the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Look round. The people near you are not neutral. They either sharpen your sword or slowly dull your edge. And here's what most won't tell you. Envy wears many disguises. Sometimes it looks like backhanded compliments. Sometimes it sounds like fake concern. Are you sure you want to do that? You've changed. Sometimes it's just silence when they used to cheer. Withdrawal when you're doing well. Distance once you found your direction. But let me be clear. You didn't change. You returned to who you were before the world told you to shrink. To the clarity beneath the people-pleasing. To the power buried beneath decades of guilt, shame, and manipulation. You came back to yourself. And that intimidates those still running from their own reflection. Now, it's your job to protect that return. Fiercely, lovingly, quietly, if you must, but never apologetically. So when you move forward, do it with a different kind of vision. Not the one that only looks ahead, but the one that also watches the sides. Watch who claps. Watch who copies. Watch who competes. Watch who suddenly disappears when you need support. Because signs aren't loud. They whisper. And you've learned to listen. This is your reminder. You were never too much. They were just not enough to hold your truth. You were never selfish for wanting more. You were just surrounded by those who settled. You were never cold for protecting your peace. You just stopped making your soul a doormat. If this message is landing with you, hit subscribe. We go deeper like this every week. Let the world call it ruthless. Let the jealous call it arrogant. Let the fearful call it overthinking. But let your future self call it wisdom. Because years from now, when you're standing in rooms built by your courage, not your compliance, you'll be grateful you watched the signs. You'll be proud you chose clarity over chaos, growth over guilt, power over pleasing. And as you walk away from those who only love the version of you they could control, you'll whisper, not with bitterness, but with calm certainty, not everyone near me wanted my success, but I do, and that was enough.